Like moths to a flame, you've thrown caution to the wind for a glimpse into our world. Well, now you're in it.
Welcome to Effed Up Stories.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to a new episode of Effed Up Stories. I am your host, Will Pender.
And I am your co-host, Ryan Sharp.
And tonight we will be bringing you another fan-submitted story, this time a story submitted by Candice Bradley. She submitted it on February 28th, a day after my birthday. Fantastic story. I've been looking forward to telling this one. But before we jump into that, just a couple of things. If you have an effed up story of your own and would like to get it onto the podcast and onto the website, you can do that by submitting it to us at the official website, which is effedupstories.com. That is EFFEDUPSTORIES.com. And we'll get it onto the website and into a podcast. And also, I don't know if I told you guys this yet, but we have went ahead and ordered official Effed Up Stories t-shirts. In fact, they're supposed to have been completed now and shipped out. I didn't get a notification yet. If I haven't heard tomorrow, I might give them a call, but it should have been shipped by now. It's a very, very small order. We don't know if we'll be doing it again. It really depends on how fast we sell them. But you can think of them as very, very exclusive at the moment, because if we don't get them again, well, that's it. So,
and even if we do, there's no guarantee that it'll be the same image or...
Right. It's a very much a wait and see thing. We just want to see how they do is testing the water. If you guys really take to them, we might be doing like different series of shirts. I do a new image for every podcast that we do, and we could start doing like limited t-shirts of this episode with this image, like the Blackbird of Chernobyl, for example, or one of the near-death experience ones, or whatever ones. It's just an idea. Like we'll probably do a poll, get your guys' opinion on which ones you think look best, and we'll do a short run based on how well these do if we sell them. And so that's, and we're going to be giving one away. I should say that too. We've gotten donations from people, and we're still accepting donations all the time to go ahead and build a show. And anybody who donated between our last giveaway, someone's going to get a free t-shirt is what it amounts to. So we appreciate all the donations, and of course everyone who does donate, we plan to give back in some way. In this case, it's going to be a free t-shirt. So that will be happening. With that having been said, we're going to jump back into the topic for tonight. And again, this was sent in by Candice Bradley on February 28th. And the title on the official site is called Of Aliens and Demons. And the reason for that is that the story really consists of two stories. And she believes that there might be a connection between them. Obviously, one is going to involve aliens and the other is going to involve demons. Now, I'm not sure if I see a connection, but I really did enjoy the story, so I'm just going to tell it, and then you guys can chime in the comments and let us know what you think. So, hi, I came across your video while browsing YouTube. I had a few odd experiences back in 1992. Now you have to remember there was no internet, cell phones with cameras, or any way to really look up information about things at that time. I come from a very small town in Indiana. I have had a few paranormal experiences in my life and some things that I still do not understand. I have been browsing the web and YouTube trying to make some sense of what I have seen and dealt with. Back in 1992, I had both a UFO and a demonic experience. I have read and watched videos of those that think there may be a correlation between the two. I'll tell you my story and see what you think. So this took place around the end of September 1992. Candice had helped a friend move out of her apartment, and they worked late into the night. She was very tired, but she wouldn't say she was exhausted. I guess it was just a very draining experience. And one of the things that she enjoys doing is to take a drive in the country, just to kind of unwind and clear her head. And when she was on her way home, she decided to take the long way to do just that. And she said this was between 12:30 and 1 a.m., so it's very late. And she said on her way, she noticed an orangish red light in the sky. And this light was east of her hometown. And it was in the direction of Louisville, Kentucky. And sometimes, she said that things go on around there. It's not unusual to see spotlights and stuff like that. I guess they're a little festive over there. So she just figured that something was going on this particular night. And although she had never seen this type of light before, that's what she chalked this up to. But as she came up on the road that she was headed for, she saw two aircraft flying, over this giant field. And she pulled onto the road and parked her car off to the side to get a better look at what was going on. And, she said she didn't turn off her car, but she did get out. And she said these things, referring to these objects in the sky, she said these things were about 50 feet over her head. She said they were so close that she felt as if she could almost reach up and touch them. She said they were metallic, they had white lights around them, and although they were each the size of around helicopters, they were both round. She said she stood there in absolute awe at what she was seeing, and she said she doesn't know how long she stood there for, but she stood there long enough to notice that she could hear crickets chirping. Now that's an interesting note, because you have these, giant flying contraptions in the sky, and there's no noise. And that dawned on her. She said these things made no noise, not a hum, not a whisper, nothing. And just as a side note, on my own UFO, when I've witnessed a UFO, that's what jumped out at me, and my wife was there. That's the thing that really jumped out at both of us. There was no noise. And I hear that a lot from other people who witness UFOs. So that was an interesting note. But anyway, she said she cannot even begin to explain how fast they moved. She said if there was a human being in these things, they were scrambled eggs by the time that they landed. That's how fast they were going. She said,
I guess the one thing to point out from that is that kind of or excludes it from being, some kind of a balloon that she's seen.
Well,
a balloon certainly wouldn't move at those rates of speed.
A balloon's not going to move like that. A helicopter's not going to move like that. And really, I can't think of any aircraft that flies and do not make a sound. I mean, if you got a jet or something like that and flies fast enough, you get that, what's it called?
Sonic boom.
Sonic boom, right? But, there's nothing like that here, and they're round. So already that's a strange anomaly. And she said, despite all this having been the case, she did not feel threatened. She said the impression that she got from these two flying objects was as if it were two kids showing off. She said, they chased each other, they jumped over each other, and at one point, one hovered perfectly still while the other spun around it. Now, that's an interesting thing. You're not going to see jets and stuff do that, right?
Not unless it's some kind of air show.
Yeah, well, even still, I can't think of a jet that could hover like that. I know a helicopter can do it, but again, no.
Well, there are VTOL jets, vertical takeoff, vertical landing jets that do hover, but that certainly doesn't sound like what she's describing here.
No, especially with sound, within regards to sound, right?
Yeah, and VTOL craft are extremely loud.
Yeah. So, she said, again, she doesn't know how long this lasted. She figures it was probably around 15 to 20 minutes. And after her left, where the orange red light was coming from, she caught what looked like a flash of white light. And she figured, this was kind of like lightning. And it flashed from that area, and all of a sudden, the two objects that she was watching stopped. And then they slowly went into the light. And that's very bizarre. She said it was very clear. It was a fall night. There was no storms in the area. Very peculiar. She did not chase them. She went home, which took about 10 minutes. And by the time she arrived, the orange red light was gone. She told her mother, a few friends, but she never reported it out of concern of being thought of as crazy. And that's not an uncommon concern for people. That, I wonder how many sightings don't get reported for that very reason. Now, she did read the local newspaper for a week just to see if anyone else had seen what she did and decided to report it, but no one did. And just so we know, and this is another thing that's becoming common with submissions to me, she didn't drink, she didn't do drugs, and to her knowledge, she has no mental illnesses that she's aware of. So that, that's an interesting thing, is that, when people experience these things, it's almost like they feel obligated to reference that. Like, I don't do drugs, I don't drink. And it's sad because everybody, I guess a lot of people, jumps to that conclusion. Right? The very idea that something so strange could be seen is like, oh, well, you must have been drunk. You must have been. Well, what
the hell are you drinking to be seeing
exactly.
UFOs?
I drink enough. I'm just going to say, I'm not going to say I got a problem, but I drink enough. And I've never seen anything, I've never hallucinated or anything like that from drinking. Even... Well, I'm not going to say anything else there, but no, there's nothing I've ever done that have made me see UFOs or aliens or anything like that. And the other thing to take an account with this is that people's stories are so vivid, right? It's not like it's a hazy recollection of something that happened. They're very vivid. They stick very strongly with the person. They're able to recall details that you don't normally in a normal day, because let's face it, in a normal day, you're not paying a special attention to everything because it's your normal day. When do you really sit up and take notice is when something very bizarre is happening. It sticks out to you because it's bizarre, and that's what happens in a lot of these cases. So really, it's more focus. It's more of a telltale sign that something very strange happened that caught their attention and stuck with them. Right, so that's the first story, part of her story that involves the UFO. So now going on to her next experience, as she had around the same time. She's not sure which experience happened first, but they happened basically within a few weeks of one another. And that's one of the correlations that she makes, because they're very strong experiences and they're very out of the norm for her, and to have them so close together. So anyway, she said, at this point in time, like currently, she's a Christian now, but she wouldn't say, like, when these events took place, that wasn't the case. She said, not that she was into Ouija boards or seances or anything of that nature, but, she wasn't particularly religious, I guess. And she said she went to bed one night, and there was nothing out of the ordinary originally, but she woke up at some point, and she knew as soon as her eyes opened that she wasn't alone in the room. And that's something that a lot of people recall too. It's a feeling. It's like an intuitive feeling that you're not alone. It's something very strong. You sense it. And that's what she had. And she said there was something in bed with her. She couldn't see it, but she could feel it. And when she describes this, she emphasizes this. She really wants you to understand that she has a very firm grasp of the English language, and she has a high IQ. But there are no words to fully describe or articulate what actually happened to her. She said the intensity of this experience was unlike anything she'd ever known, felt, or seen. She said the hate that oozed off of this being was just tremendous. It was overwhelming. She said the best way that she can explain it is to compare it to standing in front of a speaker the size of a house with the volume on full blast and feeling the sound waves crushing into you over and over. But never actually hearing a sound. And I'm trying to think of something common that people would experience with that. Maybe you've been stuck in someone's crazy ass car with the subwoofers and the bass, right? Forget the sound part of it, but you just feel it. Or if you stand in front of like a half stack of amps or something like that cranked up, if you were able to block out the sound part and just feel it, like there's a very strong feeling when there's a lot of audio waves coming at you. So that's what she's comparing it to, which is very I know what she's talking about, and I would find that pretty intense.
Would be a very visceral experience.
Yeah, it's all. I'm sure people have felt it to a degree, but just try to picture it without actually hearing anything. So anyway, she was getting this, and it's interesting that she describes it as feeling it in waves, because that's what they call a sound wave, right? There's a compression and refraction of the frequency. Anyway, I'm not going to go too far into that. She said these waves that she was feeling were of pure hate. I guess it was just radiating this wave of pure hate at her. And she said if everybody on Earth hated you at the same moment, it could not compare to this. So she's just trying to really emphasize how strong this was. She said she could physically feel the hate, conceit, and arrogance just dripping off of whatever this thing was. And the way that, they communicated, because they communicated together. And she said the way they communicated was kind of like reading each other's thoughts, but much deeper. She said she could feel a physical connection between their minds. And again, she can't put this in the proper words. I guess it would be hard to articulate that.
It's interesting that she would make that remark, because I know that there's been studies done by some kind of neuroscientist, biologist, or something. He's multidisciplinary. Anyway, he's done some research on verifiably psychic individuals, not like telekinesis or anything, but people who are able to know things that they shouldn't, and are able to somehow, just glean information using their mind. And what he found was that, the person who was doing the reading and the target, that their brain waves would sync up while the psychic, this man in this individual case that I read, while he was, getting the information, right beforehand, he would spend about 10-15 minutes kind of, preparing himself, and then they watched in awe as their brainwaves slowly started to match, and it was this guy changing his brainwaves to match the other guys. So, there does seem to be, at least in this case, a clear indication that, she very well may have, come as close as a mind can come to touching another mind, identical brainwaves kind of a thing.
And, she's not the first one to say, I've heard this a number of times. As we've grown as a channel, we get more submissions, and I'm after getting a bunch. I mean, I've read submissions with people running into aliens, running into cryptids, running into all different kinds of entities, and they describe the interaction, the communication as a telepathic kind of experience. But also, it's interesting that a lot of times, just like Candice in the story, is that it's more than just the communication, like it's a certain understanding or something like that they communicate that you couldn't do with words.
Well, yeah,
right?
it's a communication is deeper than words. That there's a certain level of emotion and intent that is conveyed in this manner that cannot be conveyed through simple word communication, speech.
Right. It's more advanced than us, and the question is, is this an inherent ability that humans have that she just locked into, or is it more so that these entities can flip a switch in your brain? And
I think in either case, it shows that we're capable of it.
Yeah, true. So, so getting back to Candice's story here, she said this terrified her, like it would, but she knew it was not a dream. She was very much wide awake, which made this a whole lot worse. And she said there was a slight bluish light in the room. And she said it was just bright enough to see a little around, right? I mean, it wasn't really bright, but she could kind of make out some stuff in the room. And she thought to herself, if she could just turn the light on, everything would be okay. Whatever this thing was, perhaps it was afraid of the light. And she said she knew that it knew that she was thinking about doing this. And however they communicated, it's as if the being began to taunt her about doing it. Very sarcastically, it told her to get up and try it. It dared her to do this. And she said she felt herself get up, and when she turned on the switch, the light would not come on. And she immediately felt a heightened sense of panic. And she said she could feel it just about ready to jump on her, but before it did, it stopped, and all of a sudden, she was back in her bed thinking about turning the light on. Now that's interesting, right? Right? I mean, she's about to do something. She's dared to do it. She does it. It obviously has control of the light. And boom, she's back in her bed, before this thing can attack her, which is interesting. So anyway, she's back in bed. She's thinking about turning the light on again, as if she just took a quick flip back in time, 30 seconds or whatever. And she said this happened over and over again. And this was one of the parts of the story that really interested me. It was almost like she was stuck into this time loop where she kept repeating this scenario. And, each time she was just put back, and it was forever loop. And she said, like she mentioned, while even at the time she believed in God wholeheartedly, she wasn't a Christian yet, and I guess, this has some significance to her. But however, she said her mother was a devout Christian, and her mother was living with her at the time, or she was living with her mother, I'm not sure which. But something, whether it was an angel or a God himself, she believes that, God or an angel stopped this evil being before it could physically hurt her. But whatever this creature was, it didn't want to stop. So, when Candice would feel this creature about to jump on her, she could also feel its intense desire to hurt her. But she could also feel something else in the room protecting her this whole time. And she said, she doesn't really know when this experience ended, but she woke up the next morning and told her mother what had happened. And she then told her, her mother told Candice that the week before, she had woken up to go to the bathroom, and she could clearly see something at the foot of her bed, dressed in this long black hooded robe, and it was just staring at her. And she said it then turned and walked out her door. So she said a prayer. After Candice had told her mother this thing, her mother said a prayer, and this never happened again. So Candice said that she actually has encountered this since, she said that like a few people at different times in her life that she knew were demonically possessed, and she had never forgotten what had actually happened. And she said, again, referencing the first part of the story, back when this actually took place, there was no internet to find information on these things. we didn't have that outlet that we have today. So she just put all these experiences behind her, sorry. And but since then, in the modern world, I guess always curious as to what have happened to her before. Obviously, these things stick with you. She's searched and she's found stories online since that are similar to what she has encountered. And, the last demonic person that she saw was in March of last year. I guess demonically possessed is what she's referencing. She said she was driving through town with her husband, and a lady was walking on the sidewalk, and as they passed her, she said that this woman looked dead at her and screamed at the top of her lungs, "I hate you." And she said her voice looked distorted. Every vein in her neck was popped out.
Her face looked distorted.
Her face looked distorted. And she's not, Candice is not the first person to tell me something like this, where a stranger, someone you don't even know, targets you in this very unusual way with distorted features, and just, because right away you'd think mental patient, right? But I think there's something strange about the idea that they'd single you out, number one. But I mean, you could pass it off as a druggie, you could pass it off as a like I said, a mental patient or someone with issues. But we have these other elements like the distorted face. There's usually something unusual that's not normally associated. You can't really explain, and that's the case that she had here. And anyway, she didn't know this woman, and she'd never ever seen her in her whole life. And she said, she ended up moving to Canada to be with her husband, and she doesn't know everybody here yet. And she doesn't know why these things happen to her, but she absolutely refuses to let fear rule over her. She said that she knows that God protects her and all these things, but she's saying and emphasizing that she knows that these things exist. These creatures are vile, they're evil, and they're out there. And she said she's a very private person by nature, and she's only told a handful of people the things that she's actually witnessed. But when she saw one of our videos, she felt compelled to share her story. And, she cautions, us and I guess everybody listening to be careful, because there's a lot of these creatures out there. And of course, she's thankful that we shared it. And, I find that interesting. I've had a number of people, actually, and I'm kind of flattered, I guess, that our show has inspired them to come out and speak for the first time on, some kind of traumatic experience that has happened to them involving the paranormal. So, this is Candice coming out and sharing her story. Thank you, Candice, by the way. And, I've got a number of submissions in my email right now, actually, that I know one of them I read, same deal, someone that never told his story before. And, there's something we did, made him want to come out and tell a story. And, there's been dozens of people that have felt compelled and wanted to come out on our show first and tell their story. And I'm flattered. I really appreciate it. And, I think the great thing about it is because there's a lot of people like you guys who have had very strange experiences like this. And a lot of these people are reserved. They are private people. Otherwise very normal people living normal lives, and they have these very bizarre experiences, and they don't know what to make of it. And they go through life, and they're at some point, if they haven't right from the get-go, they start trying to research, trying to figure out, because it's still a traumatic experience that they could never explain, they could never make sense out of. And they share these stories, I guess, hoping, on one hand, I guess it's to get it off their chest, it's to get it out there. But on another note, there are others who have experienced similar things, and I think it's great that people who have experienced such rare things can come together, and because I really do believe in that saying, misery loves company. you know, if you have this,
even more important than that, I think, you know, if we ever as a society, you know, hope to come to terms with this phenomenon, you know, and I guess I'll start by addressing the UFO phenomenon first. You know, taking that as a separate incident, and you know, it was very classic kind of encounter. You know, all the hallmarks of a genuine sighting, something that really is unidentified. And again, you know, this playful nature, you know, seems to indicate something other than human, you know, advanced human prototype technology. You know, the childlike behavior. But, you know, if we ever hope to get a handle on this, with or without any kind of official governmental disclosure, no matter how this comes to light, whether something that appears in the sky or an extraterrestrial race takes control of all of our media devices simultaneously and delivers a message, or, you know, the government just lets the cat out of the bag, or however it happens, you know, it's important, I think, to have some kind of a dialogue about these kinds of things. If we ever hope to come to terms with it, you know, just logically, but I think, you know, emotionally, because you think of how many, at this point, it has to be millions of people who've been affected in different ways by the unidentified flying object phenomenon.
well,
You know,
you make a
ranging
good
from extraterrestrial contact to just contact with a supposed craft.
Well, the point that you made that I think is okay. So people have these experiences, right? They have these really bizarre experiences. Obviously, there's so many people that have had them. Sure, there's definitely bullshit ones, just like the guy who says he killed a moose with a spoon. I mean, there's always people like that. But I mean, there's enough of them to know that there are definitely some genuine ones as well, right? And the problem is, I mean, we've got so many, you know, there's been so many things exposed that show that, you know, the government knows about aliens, that, you know, the military knows about aliens.
Or at least parts of those institutions.
Right. And you know, they're not coming out and saying it. They're not disclosing it. How long have we been hearing about the Disclosure Project, right? I mean, that's just, if it ever happens, wow, did it ever take a long ass time, right?
Yeah. Well, the Disclosure Project is a separate project being undertaken by a guy named Stephen Greer, and you
right.
know, it's. But I get what you're saying. The whole, you know, disclosure idea that there's going to be an official one day, you know, the president of the United States and. You know, maybe the prime minister, maybe, you know, a bunch of world leaders go to the UN and do it that way. You know, the disclosure scenario and how unfucking likely that is.
Right, and the issue is, if that even ever does happen, right, is the fact that so many people have experienced this already, and they don't feel like they can bring it up in a public forum without public ridicule. You know, people are afraid that they'll be labeled as crazy. You know, it ruins their credibility. But meanwhile, they've had these very real, very terrifying experiences that are traumatic, that are, you know, can result in post-traumatic stress disorder, have caused all kinds of issues. So really, I mean, if this is ever going to come out, realistically, the only thing that we can count on is, you know, places such as ours. And, you know, I know there's hundreds of places, but the idea being that private groups that, you know, open a floor, you know, put a spotlight on this stuff for people to share these stories, right? I mean, we're one such channel that does that. There's hundreds of channels that do it. There's TV shows that do it. Unfortunately, when it comes to TV, there is a stigma that it's all fake, and, you know, to a degree they might be right, because a lot of that stuff is, well, how do we improve ratings? Well, the story might not be as interesting if nobody dies and this doesn't happen and that doesn't happen, but that's the way it happens. But that don't fly when there's a budget involved and there's people investing and stuff like that. So, these private channels such as ours and the other dozens of podcasts and radio shows, that's probably the best place to get your story out there. I mean, and truthfully, the people listening to these shows, a lot of them have had experiences, hence why they find it in the first place. Once you have an experience, it becomes a very personal interest, and you go looking for it, and then all of a sudden you start finding places where, people are telling the stories that they have had, and it's like all of a sudden it kind of feels like home. Right? It's like, well, these people understand. These people get it. They've experienced it. And that's what we look for as people. We're looking for, anybody that can... that's what people do. They look for groups to fit into. They look for groups where, they're similar-minded, where they can discuss, where they can,
Definitely. But now, specifically speaking about this kind of, because this is a special kind of UFO story. It's one of those that has this, because we take UFOs and we take demonic religious experiences, and they're separate, right? In when you first start thinking about it, it's separate because one's nuts and bolts and aliens and technology and science. And, the other one is about spirit, and, one's sci-fi and one's fantasy. So we separate them as two separate genres. But, this is something that's cropped up more and more over the last decade or so, where, there seems to be a crossing of these events. I know there's a lot of people who believe that, extraterrestrials are just the new guys that demons are taking to lead people astray. Personally, I find that, too cut and dry, like too clean of an answer. Because we all know that, real life is messy and chaotic and sloppy and, sometimes has no rhyme or reason. And, sometimes horrible things can happen. Bizarre, unlikely things can happen and not necessarily be related. But, what's your take on the UFO demonic phenomenon and this in general, I guess?
Well, truthfully, I mean, you and I have discussed this before, probably in a podcast. And,
and off.
And off. I mean, that's where the podcast came from. Is that you and I? we've always been discussing these topics. But personally, I don't see a connection. I've tried. It's like this. Look, I get emails from people all the time about everything, right? And I get sometimes like lengthy emails right into detail about this connection, and this is something I'm speaking of on this is kind of recent actually for me, within like the last couple months, and I'd gotten all these emails, very lengthy on this very subject, and why this person believed that they were all connected. And when I looked down through it, and I could see, he was saying, is this because of this? Is this because of this? And I, at the bottom of it, I was just like, okay, like but why do you think that? Like, where did you pull this from? Where, and his response was that, he watches a lot of documentaries and stuff like that. And it's just what he believes. But there was no real, I guess, real reason that I could see that made sense. It's just like, you watch a bunch of podcasts, you read a bunch of stories, and based on what you're given, you formulate an opinion. You kind of lean a certain way. For me personally, I mean, that there's topics that I lean a certain way on, just based on my belief system. But usually I I base it on like there's some kind of something in my own experience or something like that. I've just never seen the alien demonic connection. The only thing that I can bring up, and I mean I'm really just speculating here at all, right? Very speculative. So I'm not saying this is the case. I'm just saying if I had to try and come up with a reason for this is what it would be. And that is that they say that mankind, was created by God, and that, we are God's people, and even the angels, like we're like God's experiment down here on Earth. The Earth is supposedly meant for us. We rule it. And when it comes to demons, for example, people say, well, if you're attacked by demons or whatever, if you pray or you ask God or whatever, or you say Jesus' name, they'll disappear, right? And that might be true. And then people have alien experiences, and the same thing happens. They say, oh, well, if you ask Jesus and you're religious or whatever, they disappear. But the way I look at that is that we are supposedly God's experiment here. Earth is like our petri dish for us. So it's not necessarily that aliens and demons are the same thing. It's that they don't belong here. This is God's petri dish. Maybe there's a different God on another realm that owns the demons. Maybe there's a different God that got a petri dish for the aliens, right? It's a different experiment coming into God's petri dish, and he's saying, no, you guys are screwing it up. We had a pact. We had a deal. You guys are to stay in your own experiment and your own petri dish, your own planet. We're not supposed to interfere with each other. Like, I'm running my own thing here. You guys stay to hell wherever you are. And it's almost like maybe there's this unwritten rule, and any entity that comes over here that don't belong gets kicked out once the spotlight is shone on them. It's like, it's almost like this alarm goes off. You call out to Jesus or whatever, or you call out to God,
and the spotlight comes on.
Yeah, the spotlight comes on, and he's like, you're not supposed to be here. Maybe there's repercussions, or like, something that happens to you for doing that. You get punished. It's like you breaking and entering. You're not allowed in here. Get the hell out. Maybe there's sanctions or whatever. I don't know. I don't know what the political, if there is a political thing between gods or whatever, but that's what it seems to me. Like they say that God made us in His image, and we're all. So
you're
being
saying
tested.
That perhaps there are other gods making other people in their image.
Well, it says right in the Bible. It says right in the Bible, "Thou shalt not worship other gods." So if the Bible is true, which everybody brings up as a fact, well, if you're going to take that as a fact, then God Himself said there's other gods, but you're not to worship them, right? You are to worship Him. He's your creator. He's your God.
So maybe I think this takes us to a really interesting place, because it forces a discussion about, well, what makes a demon and an alien an alien? They're both obviously sentient in some way, shape, or form, living creatures, because they're animated and they have desires and they're intelligent. Why can't a demon just be, a misunderstood kind of, extraterrestrial form of life?
Well, the way I understand it, like, if you want me to break this down in a way that I believe it to be, and again, I'm not basing this on, this is just based on what I've read. I'm not saying this is fact. I'm not saying this is how it is. But the way I understood it to be is that on Earth, what makes us special? Why do you think demons want to get into our bodies? Or why aliens are probably so interested in us? What makes the human body so damn interesting to seemingly everything out there? And, interdimensional beings, cryptids, all these things that we run into. And what it seems to be is that the spirit only seems to be able to grow within these bodies. It's like these bodies are the suit that you need, to exist on this place. And it's almost like, if you look in the Greek mythology, they talk about, when around the time people are born or whatever. Anyway, they reference this thing called Lethe River. And when you drink from Lethe River, it causes amnesia. And, this idea comes back to when you're born. You have amnesia. You don't remember your past lives. You don't remember these things about you. But a lot of people who have near-death experiences, one of the first things they notice when they go on to, like, they enter the void or wherever it is that they end up, is that there's this familiarity that comes back to them. It's like all their previous lives, all these things that they used to know that they didn't in this life, it all comes back to them, but they can't retain it when they come back to Earth, when they come back. It's like when you have a dream, right? You're having this dream, and, all this crazy stuff is happening. It's very vivid. It's very, meaningful, symbolic. And then you wake up.
And even real to you.
And then you wake up, and most of it is gone. If you don't write that shit down, when you first wake up, it's gone. People refer to that as a dream journal. And you know what? I did that for like a week or two. And I remember waking up and having like 3 pages of notes, right? Now, when you wake up tomorrow, see if you can remember 3 notes of, what you dreamt last night, right? I mean, it just don't happen. If you don't have a dream journal, you're going to lose that. It's very elusive.
Interestingly, a lot of DMT, like very high-dose DMT experiences are recorded in the same way. That, the people come back and they articulate as much as they can, and, they quickly forget it unless it's not written down. And then there's even all kinds of information that they're like, yeah, this just wouldn't make it back across the filter or whatever.
Yeah, just like that Tool song, Rosetta Stone. The whole thing was like this really bad trip. Then the chorus was like, God damn, you forgot his pen. Right? Yeah, had the meaning of life, had everything. It was like, oh shit, I forgot my pen.
Yeah.
Can't write it down, right? So, that's the fact of the matter. So when it comes to Ryan, speaking about amnesia, I can't remember what the hell I was talking about.
Well, I think that we've hit a lot of the major points on this phenomenon, the UFO demonic phenomenon, and it's something that's going to come up again, no doubt, and it's a discussion that we'll probably have again, and that's great, that's fantastic. We'll keep learning more. We'll get more and more bits of information, and whatever you guys out there think, please add in the comments below, email us, whatever. We love hearing from you and what your ideas on this stuff might be. Because again, I think it's important that if we don't know exactly what's going on, we can at least have a dialogue on what's being experienced, and go from there.
I take that as you forgot too. I know it was okay. You come back in your life and you got amnesia. Right. Okay, I kind of remember where I was going with that. The idea being that you can't have your past experience, you can't have your past knowledge to learn. Right? It's almost like you need to learn it for the first time. It needs to be fresh. So you need to have that amnesia when you come here. You need to be fresh. So that's something that these bodies are. They're like these anchors to this realm, and it's like we don't recall the past. It's like it blocks that out. And it seems like demons, they say like only in these bodies, in this life, can you grow your spirit. And the idea being that when you die, when your body dies, your anchor is gone, tying you here. Well, your spirit, whatever vibrational frequency you're at, is going to be drawn to wherever most closely vibrates within that same frequency. I don't think it's just good and bad, heaven and hell. I think there's many shades of good and bad. So the idea being that when we're here, the good things that you do are supposed to increase the frequency of your vibrational being. So the faster it vibrates, the higher you can go, the further in the good place you can reach. That's your goal here. If you're bad, that's a lower vibrational thing, and it sends you to a lower place. So these really negative entities like demons and such, they supposedly exist in very low vibrational places, and maybe they feel stuck. They don't have that body where they can, grow their spirit, and they're stuck in that realm. That's where their vibrational being is. They can't get out. They're stuck. So how do you get out? Well, if we could possess the body of somebody, even for a week or whatever, maybe that's what it would take to grow my spirit just a little bit, so I can inch a little bit further to a more happy place than this pit of despair I'm in, right? I mean, that's what makes sense to me. And with aliens, the way I picture aliens is just like how we would be if we could find them. Just very curious. What do they do? What are they all about? Or maybe they're more advanced humans. They're humans who got off this rock before like some kind of major disaster that wiped most of us out. Maybe they're the ones that got away. They
So
managed.
you're thinking ancient humans?
Ancient humans, perhaps, a pocket of them or whatever got away. They inhabited another planet. They've reached the technology. They got there because the way it looks like on Earth is like every so many thousands of years or whatever is like, this natural disaster happens, whether it's a solar flare or
Some sort of mass extinction.
some kind of mass extinction, and like sometimes it could wipe out species and such. I think more or less with humans, perhaps pockets of us did survive. But I mean, you got to imagine if that happened right now and pockets of us survived. It's like, yeah, I know what a computer is and I know how to use one. I know how to do all these different things. I know how to drive a car. But if I had to build one, well, I don't know how to do that, right? I mean, and once you wipe something like that out, I mean, the things that we use to even build it. How long did it take to create the industrialized revolution, to create factories that could manufacture this stuff? I mean,
Well, that's not even the hardest part. The hardest part would be the clean rooms that are required to create advanced electronics.
Right, so you already have to get very advanced just to go back to the basics with some of the stuff, right? It's like we just go back so far, right? So you'd have a pocket of people who survived, but they'd just be like cavemen again. It's like, well, what do we do? Well, we got to look for berries. Well, we got to look for, we got to hunt animals. We got to wear.
So you're definitely a subscriber to the the multiple beginning theory. That
I think it's possible. I mean, they said like the pyramids and stuff like that used to have like a very different material on it, like a green.
Yeah, it was covered in limestone, I do believe.
Yeah, like there was all these like, and for that matter,
people in the area chopped it all up and used it as building material.
and what was it they found like in the ocean? It was like some kind of piece of technology that like is very, very old. They don't understand. Human civilization. I know you know what I'm talking about.
Oh, you're talking about the they call it the something or other computer. It's like a series of gears and wheels, and I think they determined through scanning it and X-raying it that it's some kind of a counting machine.
Right, and we know that civilization, as we know it, our people, as far as we know, never did it. So,
well, I think a better. Well, there's lots of better examples than just that. The whole O parts phenomenon, as they call it, out of place artifacts.
Yeah,
that's somebody cracks open a rock and finds something that looks like a spark plug.
Right. So, like, to me, and I mean, there's lots of examples. I mean, honestly, I'm not prepared for it because I didn't. We do these topics and we end up here. Right?
Yeah, we're a little off base right now.
We're not really prepared for this as a topic, but the point being is that there's lots of examples out there that shows there was advanced civilization back before our current history says there is, and that to me says that it's very possible that we've reached this point in technology and in culture, and we were wiped out for the most part in one way or another, right? Whether that's discovering the nuclear bomb and blowing ourselves up, or it's natural disaster or something like that. It happens, but perhaps...
Or the result of sending that first ship off into space.
Right, but perhaps, at some point in this ever-looping thing, perhaps, a pocket of us did get away, perhaps even more, and inhabited another planet. They advanced, they changed physically to adapt to their habitat over thousands of years. Maybe that's what aliens are. And maybe they come back here because I've heard lots of stories of like UFOs, for example, flying over nuclear sites and stopping, like completely shutting down all the power. Nobody could figure it out. They had generators. Nobody could figure out why they couldn't fire these things, and except to say that there was a UFO there, and mysteriously everything would just refuse to work. And maybe it's because that is ancient civilization in the future who knows better, who knows what we're going to do to ourselves, and comes down and is like, we're trying to give you a chance. We're trying to help you get off this planet, because maybe there's a limited amount of time. And maybe, the more advanced races and civilizations or whatever, maybe they know that we're all supposed to work together, that we're all one life force, that we're all supposed to be one giant system working together. And they're doing their part by helping us not destroy ourselves, which we like to do. I mean, we're humans on Earth, and we're always at war with each other. We're always attacking one another. We're always, for what we like to think of as the most advanced race on Earth, we're pretty nasty, right? We're very far back in that regard. So maybe that's what it is. Maybe that's all it is. So anyway, yeah, we definitely went in a strange direction there. But when it comes to aliens and demons, I don't see it as a connected thing. I know a lot of people do, and I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm just saying this is how I lean. So with that said, I hope you guys did enjoy the episode. Of course, if you have an effed up story of your own, we'd like to hear it. And we'd like to get it into a podcast and onto the website. So to do that, you can go to the official site, which is effedupstories.com. That's EFFEDUPSTORIES.com. Go to the menu, click on submissions, fill out the form, hit submit, and I'll get it all under, get it moving forward. Be on the lookout in the very near future for our very exclusive short run Effed Up Stories t-shirts. It's already in the works, guys. It's already paid for. It's already happening. That'll be coming soon, as well as some other things. And yeah, so with that said, hope you enjoyed the episode, and we'll catch you next time.
Thanks for listening, everyone. Have a great night.